In this video, we'll explore what we mean by the word privacy. What does that word even mean? It's so broad. Well, it turns out it has many possible meanings, many different ways you could understand what we might mean by privacy. One notion was articulated by Supreme Court justices early in the century, where they suggested a way to understand privacy as the right to be left alone. Like, not have people, solicitors, knocking on your door and disturbing you when you just wanted to be alone in your own home. Another way to understand the word privacy is it's about control. It's about personal control. It's about control over information about me. What control can I have over what other people can learn about me, or what they can do with that information, or how they can use it, or who they can share it with? Control, personal control. Another view of privacy comes from the regulatory context. In the US, regulators have the notion of fair information practices, which encode a sort of minimalistic notion of respect for people's privacy. And there are three main principles in the fair information practices. One of them is notice, providing people notice if you're collecting information about them so that they have a chance to be aware that you're collecting information about them or what you'll do with the information. Second principle is consent, that perhaps people should have a right to have some say over whether you collect information about them or what you do about them. And there are different notions of consent. One notion of consent is opt-in. That's where we ask for explicit consent. Can I gather this information about you? Can I gain access to your credit report? There's also the notion of opt-out consent, which is a lot like opt-in consent. But in opt-in consent, I assume I don't have your permission until you tell me yes. And opt-out, the default is to assume that it's okay to do the thing unless someone tells you they don't want you to do it. Okay? And a third principle in fair information practices is access, that people should have a right to know what information credit agencies have about them. A right to see your own credit report, for instance. Why? Maybe so that if there are any errors in there, there's a chance you can notify the company and perhaps get it corrected. Anyway, there's nothing that says that all three of these have to be applied in any particular situation, but there are three notions of ways that we might respect people's privacies. And another notion of privacy comes from the philosopher Helen Nissenbaum, where she suggested that maybe we should understand privacy as contextual integrity. And that's some big words. So let's unpack what she means by that. She means that when we're talking to someone, when we're sharing with someone in ordinary human conversations, there's usually some implicit, unstated context about the notion of our conversation or about the circumstances of the information I'm sharing. So if I grab a beer with a buddy down on Friday afternoon at the bar and I start recounting my woes with my boss, I have an implicit assumption that my buddy won't go repeat that information to other people, and certainly not to my boss, right? It doesn't even need to be said. It's just, it goes with the territory. It's one of those social norms and expectations that we all learn and that help make society run well. So Helen Nissenbaum suggested that in each conversation or transaction, there's some notion of context that might provide the unstated assumptions about how the information will be used or why it's being used or in what ways we expect it to be used. And she suggests that people feel like their privacy has been violated if information is used in a way that surprises them, that differs from what you would expect given the context. Okay, so that's another notion of a way to think about privacy. So I'm sharing you all these different notions because no one of them is right or wrong. Privacy is an elusive concept, and different people might mean different things by the same word. But this is a couple of different angles of how you can think about what we might mean when we talk about privacy in the digital age. Okay. So why should we care about privacy? There's a variety of reasons. Some examples might be, I might care about privacy so I can manage my own reputation. Like maybe I curate my pictures on Instagram to show a particular image. I might not want potential employers to see those shots of me drunk. We also use it to maintain social boundaries. We share some information with some people and not other information because we want to have boundaries in our relationships, and boundaries are a healthy thing. Sometimes privacy is used as a method of individual power, as a way to set limits on government power or corporate power. We take back our own control over our information. For instance, if you care about gun rights, one issue you might hear in that notion is the idea of a registry of guns. Well, that could be a precursor to, the theory is that could be a precursor to regulating and prohibiting and confiscating guns. And so the notion of that kind of a database lends power to the government or the company. And conversely, the right to not be included in that database maybe gives me some individual power. So you can think about it as a way of reacting to perceived excess in power and hierarchies. Privacy also can help support freedom of thought and freedom of speech, as well as the opportunity for second chances. So I teach college students, and one of the things that we encourage college students to do in college is explore with different ideas and discover what they believe and what values they hold true and what ideas they buy into. And one way you explore that is by trying out ideas that maybe you're not sure you believe in, or even trying out ideas that later you repudiate. Well, it would be hard on all of us if we were forever held responsible for all those thoughts and things we said even when we were young. So privacy is a way to provide a safe space for people to have those conversations in a way that they know won't be broadcast to the world and won't come back to haunt them 20 years later. Okay, so there's a variety of reasons why people might care about privacy. Those are just some of them. And the last one that I'll mention is a theme and a trend that I think that many privacy advocates worry about, is the growing trend of use of information technology to form architectures of persuasion. So let me say what I mean by that. When I go click web pages on the internet, advertising companies are collecting information about what web pages I visit, what search terms I enter, because they want to learn about me. Why do they want to learn about me? Because they think that they can provide better advertisements that are better targeted to my interests and maybe persuade me to buy their goods. Okay? So by knowing more about me, they can tailor their message to make it more likely that they persuade me, in this case, to buy something. In the elections world, we're starting to see something similar, where election campaigns gather a lot of information about voters so that they can tailor their message to each individual voter and try to provide a message that will be most likely to resonate with that voter and most likely to persuade that voter to vote for their candidate. So what we see is this growing trend towards collection of information about people and then use of that information to try to persuade them. And that raises a concern about how far could this go? And if these architectures were misused, what might they be misused for? So I think many privacy advocates see privacy as one potential way to fight back against the worst possible futures by keeping private certain information about me It reduces the opportunity for governments and companies to use that information to try to manipulate me, try to provide messages that will appeal to my emotions or manipulate me or persuade me in ways that might not be in my best interest. Okay, that's a conceptual overview of some possible ways you could think about privacy and why we might care about it. I think now would be a good time to start getting a little more concrete. So in our next videos, I will start to show you a real-world data set and ways that privacy concerns might start to enter in when you start doing data science on data about real live people.